My hands were shaking so badly. The paper kept trembling. I stared at the letter. I stared at his handwriting. And for a moment, I couldn't breathe, because it felt impossible. That wallet had been in my drawer for years. I had never opened it. I had never moved it. And yet, here was a letter I had never seen before. I swallowed hard. My throat burned, and I whispered to the empty room, "Are you doing this to me now?" No answer, only silence. But the silence didn't feel empty. It felt heavy, like something was watching. Like the past had finally decided to speak. I sat down on the edge of the bed. I held the letter with both hands, and I began to read. My wife, the one I never deserved. My eyes filled instantly, not because it was sweet, but because it was too late. Too late to sound sincere. Too late to mean anything. I kept reading. If you are reading this, then I am gone. And if I am gone, then I know what you are doing. I know you are talking to my photograph. I know you are speaking to me at night. I know you are still waiting for my voice. My stomach dropped. My heart started pounding. How could he know? How could he write that? My fingers tightened around the paper. I read on. I used to sit in the dark sometimes and listen to you breathe beside me, and I would think, how can a woman love a man like me? My throat tightened. My vision blurred. I whispered, because I was stupid. But I kept reading. I want to tell you the truth. Not the soft truth. Not the truth that makes me look like a good man. The real truth. My chest tightened. I took a shaky breath. And I continued. I did not live two lives because I was strong. I lived two lives because I was weak. I wanted love without consequences. I wanted comfort without honesty. I wanted to be forgiven without confessing. Tears fell onto the paper. I wiped them quickly, but they kept coming. Because every sentence felt like he was peeling my heart open. He wrote, I know you will ask yourself, was I not enough? And I want you to hear this clearly. You were more than enough. The problem was never you. The problem was me. My lips trembled. I whispered, then why did you ruin me? I looked at his photograph. The same smile. The same calm eyes. The same face that had comforted me for years. And suddenly, I felt something change inside me. I didn't feel love. I didn't feel grief. I felt disgust. I looked back at the letter. He wrote, I met Aisha's mother in a year when I hated myself. I was angry at the world. I was angry at poverty. I was angry that I could not give you the life you deserved. And instead of becoming better, I ran. I ran into someone else's arms. And for a moment, I felt like a man again. My jaw clenched. My hands shook harder. I whispered, so you used her too. I read on. I told her you were dead. Yes, I said it. I killed you with my mouth. My whole body froze. My breath caught, and I felt something inside me collapse. Killed me with his mouth. That was the sentence. That was the cruelty. I covered my mouth, and I started crying again. Not soft crying, not quiet. I cried like a woman who had just found out. Her husband had buried her while she was alive. I read on. When she found out about you, she did not scream. She did not curse. She just looked at me and said, "You made me love a man who doesn't exist." I stopped reading for a second, because that sentence felt like it belonged to me too. He continued, I stayed in her life longer than I should have. I made promises I never planned to keep. And when she got pregnant, I felt fear, real fear, because suddenly my sin had a face, a child, and I knew I could not hide forever. My throat tightened. I kept reading. So I did what cowards do. I built a small house. I gave them just enough. I gave them a place to exist, without letting them enter my real life. My hands shook. I whispered, "My God." I read on. When Aisha was born, I held her in my arms, and I cried, not because I was happy, but because I knew I had created a daughter who would grow up with a father made of shadows. Tears fell again. My chest hurt. He wrote, I loved her, but I loved her like a thief loves stolen gold. Quietly, secretly, with fear, with shame. And every time I returned home to you, I looked at your face and felt like I was poisoning you. I laughed bitterly through tears. Poisoning me. Yes, that was exactly what he did. Then I reached the part that made my hands go numb. He wrote, You will meet her. I know you will. Because secrets never stay buried. They rise. They always rise. And when you meet her, you will want to hate her. Please don't. My eyes burned. I whispered, Don't. He continued, She is innocent, and she has suffered more than you know. She has stood at my grave and cried for a father who never gave her a proper goodbye. I stopped reading. My breath shook, because it was true. She had visited his grave. Before me, she had cried. Before me, she had been mourning him, without me even knowing she existed. I kept reading. I am writing this because I am afraid of one thing. Not death, not hell, not punishment. I am afraid that you will stop talking. My throat tightened. I stared at that line, because it felt like he was speaking directly to my life. He wrote, If you stop talking, you will finally see me clearly, and you will hate me. And if you hate me, then my biggest comfort dies. Your love, your forgiveness, your softness. My fingers tightened around the paper. And suddenly, I felt rage. Rage so hot, it made my tears stop for a moment. Because even in his apology, even in his confession, he was still thinking of himself, his comfort, his guilt, his fear. I whispered, "You selfish man." I read the final part. "My wife, tomorrow you will go to my grave. You will stand there with my son, and you will meet my daughter, and you will feel like your heart is being ripped apart. But please, please do not let this destroy you. You were the best part of my life, and I was the worst part of yours. Forgive me, if you can, and if you cannot, then at least forgive yourself, because you did nothing wrong. You only loved." My hands went limp. The letter slid slightly in my fingers. I stared at it, and I didn't know what I felt. Not love, not hatred, not grief, just exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion that comes after years of carrying a heavy bag, and finally realizing it was never yours. I folded the letter slowly, my fingers shaking. Then I looked at his photograph. I stared at his eyes, and for the first time, I spoke. But not like before, not softly, not lovingly. I whispered, "I won't talk to you tonight." My voice shook. "I won't give you that comfort. I won't give you my voice." I wiped my face, and I whispered again, "You don't deserve my nights." Then I lay down. I turned my face away from his photograph, and I forced myself to sleep. But sleep didn't come easily, because my mind kept repeating one thing. Tomorrow. Tomorrow at 5 p.m. Tomorrow I would meet her. Aisha. The daughter he hid. The daughter he loved in secret. The daughter who had been waiting for us. And in the darkness, I felt something new. Not fear, not anger. A different kind of pain. The pain of realizing that my husband's secrets weren't finished. Because if he wrote that letter and hid it, it meant he knew something. Something he didn't write. Something he still kept from me. And suddenly, I remembered the woman who came to my door. The woman who said, "I'm his wife too." She had told me. Mariam was another woman. She had told me. Someone disappeared. And now, Aisha existed. Aisha was alive. Aisha was 26. So where was her mother? Where was the woman who carried her? Where was the woman who loved him enough to believe his lies? My heart started pounding again, because suddenly, I felt it. A horrible feeling, like the truth was not complete. Like there was still one more secret, waiting to destroy us. I turned in bed. I stared into the darkness, and I whispered, "What did you do to her?" No answer, only silence, and that silence felt like guilt. I didn't sleep, not even for 1 minute. I lay in bed like a statue, staring at the ceiling, listening to the clock. Tick, tick, tick. Each second felt like it was cutting something inside me. I kept seeing her face. Aisha. Her eyes. Her trembling hands. The way she said, "I'm his daughter." And then, I kept seeing the letter, the handwriting, the words, the truth. And I kept thinking, how many lives can one man ruin? How many hearts can one man split in half, and still be remembered as a good husband? When morning finally came, I didn't feel awake. I felt hollow, like my body was walking without my soul. I made tea, but I didn't drink it. I stood in the kitchen and held the cup until it went cold. Then I sat on the sofa, and for the first time in 20 years, I didn't speak to him. Not even once. Not even a whisper. Not even a complaint. I just sat there, quiet, and the quiet felt different. It didn't feel like love. It felt like punishment. It felt like I was finally giving him what he deserved. Silence. Hours passed. And when the time came, 5 p.m., my son arrived. He looked nervous. He didn't know about the letter. He didn't know about my sleepless night. He only knew we were going to meet a girl who shared his father's blood. He said softly, "Ami, are you okay?" I looked at him. My son. The child I raised with my hands. The child who carried my husband's name. And I realized, this wasn't only about me anymore. This was about him too. This was about what kind of man he would become. Because children don't just inherit faces. They inherit wounds. I nodded slowly and said, "I'm fine." But my voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. We left the house. The sky was grey. The air was cold. And the road to the graveyard felt longer than usual. Like the world was stretching time to torture me. In the car, my son kept looking at me. Then he said quietly, "Ami, what if she hates us?" I swallowed hard. I stared out the window. And I whispered, "She has every right." When we reached the graveyard, my legs felt weak. My son walked beside me. I could hear the crunch of dry leaves under our feet. I could smell the earth. That smell. The smell of endings. As we walked deeper inside, I saw her. She was standing near his grave. Alone. No mother with her. No family. Just her. And she was holding flowers in her hands. White flowers. Simple. Like she didn't want to look like she was claiming anything. Like she didn't want to take up space. When she saw us, she froze. Her face turned pale. Her hands started trembling. My son stopped walking. I felt him stiffen beside me. Because now, it was real. Now she wasn't a story. She wasn't a rumor. She wasn't a maybe. She was standing there, breathing, alive, a living proof of my husband's betrayal. We stood a few steps away. No one spoke. The silence was thick. Aisha looked down at the grave. Then she looked at me, and her voice came out small, like a child's. Assalamu alaikum. I wanted to answer, but my throat closed. My son said softly, Walaikum salam. Aisha swallowed. Then she whispered, I didn't know if you would come. My son's jaw tightened. He looked at her and said, Why did you call us here? Her eyes filled with tears. She looked at the grave. Then she looked back at us. And she said the words that broke me. Because I'm tired. My heart clenched. She continued, her voice shaking. I'm tired of being a secret. I'm tired of feeling like I don't exist. I'm tired of wondering if my father ever loved me. My son looked away. His eyes were wet. He was trying not to cry, but I could see it. His pain. Because even though he was the real son, he was still a child of the same man. And now he was learning. His father was not who he thought. Aisha stepped closer, slowly, like she was afraid I would slap her. Then she held out the flowers, and she said, I brought these for him. My son stared at the flowers. Then he looked at the grave, and suddenly, he spoke with anger, not loud, but sharp. He doesn't deserve flowers. Aisha flinched. Her lips trembled. She whispered, I know. That's when my chest tightened again. Because she wasn't defending him. She wasn't trying to prove he was good. She wasn't even trying to steal him. She was just hurting. And I realized something. This girl was not my enemy. My husband was. But even he was gone. And now the only people left to carry the pain were us, the living. Aisha took a shaky breath. Then she said quietly, My mother is dead. The world stopped. My son looked at her sharply. I felt my knees go weak. I whispered, Dead. Aisha nodded. Tears fell down her cheeks. She wiped them quickly, like she was embarrassed. Then she said, She died when I was 15. She was sick. And when she was dying, she kept calling his name. My stomach turned. My throat burned. Aisha continued. She said, He promised he would come. She said, He promised he would be there. But he never came. My son's face twisted in pain. He whispered, He didn't come. Aisha shook her head. No. He sent money. He sent a message. But he didn't come. And my mother died. Still waiting for him. I felt my heart crack. Because now I understood. This wasn't just betrayal. This was cruelty. He let a woman die. Alone. He let his daughter bury her mother. Alone. While he came home to me. And ate dinner. And smiled. And kissed my forehead. I couldn't breathe. I turned my face away. And I started crying. Not quietly, not softly. I cried like something inside me was collapsing. My shoulders shook. My son looked at me. Then he looked at Aisha, and I saw it in his eyes. He was angry, but he was also broken, because suddenly he didn't know what to feel. Aisha wiped her tears again. Then she whispered, "I don't want anything from you. I don't want money. I don't want your house. I don't want your name. I just—" Her voice cracked. "I just wanted to meet the woman he loved." I froze. The woman he loved. Me. I looked at her, and for the first time, I saw her properly. She was young, but her eyes were old. The kind of eyes that had cried too much. The kind of eyes that had learned loneliness early. She looked at me like I was a miracle, like I was something she had dreamed about. And that broke me more than anything, because she didn't look at me with hate. She looked at me with longing. She whispered, "My mother used to tell me," she said. She said he had a wife. And she said you were kind. I laughed through tears. A bitter, shaking laugh. Kind. Yes, I was kind. So kind. I forgave a man without knowing what I was forgiving. Aisha took a small step closer. Then she said something that made my blood go cold. "He wrote you a letter, didn't he?" My breath caught. I stared at her. She looked down. Then she nodded. "He wrote me one too." My heart stopped. I whispered, "He wrote you one too?" Aisha nodded. She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. Old. Yellowed. Folded. She held it out with trembling hands, and she said, "He gave it to me 2 days before he died. And he told me. Her voice cracked. "He told me to give it to you one day." I stared at the envelope. My hands started shaking again. I whispered, "What does it say?" Aisha swallowed. Then she said, It says he wanted you and me to forgive each other." My son let out a sound. Half laugh, half sob. He whispered, "What kind of man?" I reached out. My fingers touched the envelope, and for a moment, I couldn't take it, because it felt like his ghost was still controlling my life, still writing the ending, still deciding what we should feel, still trying to make himself look like a man worth mourning. I took it anyway, because I needed to know. I opened it slowly. My eyes scanned the first line, and I felt my throat close. My wife and my daughter. My hands shook. I read, "If you are both reading this, I am gone, and I am sorry, but I know sorry is not enough." I kept reading. I destroyed 2 women, one by lying, one by hiding, and I destroyed my children too, because now they will grow up, carrying the weight of my sins. Tears blurred my vision. I read on. "I am asking you, please don't hate each other, because you are both victims of me." I swallowed. I looked at Aisha. She was watching me carefully. like she was waiting to see if I would tear it, or throw it, or scream. I continued reading. My wife, you gave me love when I didn't deserve it. My daughter, you gave me a second chance at being a father, and I failed you both. I stopped. My hands were shaking too much. I couldn't read anymore. I folded the letter, and I looked at his grave. I stared at the dirt, at the stone, at his name, and I felt something inside me shift. For 20 years, I had spoken to him every night. I had kept him alive in my words. I had made him into a good man, a gentle man, a loyal man, a man worth missing. But now, standing in front of his grave, with his son beside me, and his daughter in front of me, I saw him. Not the husband, not the memory, not the photograph, the truth. He was a coward. He was selfish. He was weak. And yet, he had still been my whole life. My son spoke quietly, his voice trembling. Amy, what do we do now? I looked at him, and I realized this was the moment where my life could go two ways. I could keep talking to my husband, keep pretending, keep loving the lie, or I could stop talking, stop feeding the ghost, stop living in a marriage that was already dead. I took a deep breath. Then I looked at Aisha, and I said softly, "Come." Aisha blinked. "Come where?" I swallowed. My voice shook. I said, "Come home with us." My son's eyes widened. He turned to me. "Amy." But I held up my hand, not to silence him, but to steady him. I looked at Aisha again, and I said, "You are not a secret anymore." Aisha's lips trembled. She whispered, "Are you sure?" I looked at her, and tears fell again. But this time, they weren't only grief, they were something else. Acceptance. I said, "I am not doing this for him. I am doing this for you, and for my son, and for myself, because I am tired too." Aisha covered her mouth. She started crying, softly, like a child who had been hungry for years, and finally saw food. My son's eyes filled. He looked at her. Then he looked at me, and I saw him break. He stepped forward, and he said quietly, "You're my sister." The word hung in the air. Sister. Aisha cried harder. She nodded. Yes, I think I am." And in that moment, I felt something I never expected. Not peace, not happiness, but a strange kind of healing, like a wound that finally stops bleeding. After years, we stood together near his grave, the three of us, and I realized he was gone, but his consequences were alive, and we had a choice. We could either destroy each other, or we could survive together. Before leaving, I looked at the grave one last time, and I whispered, Not lovingly, not softly, not like a wife, like a woman, like a survivor. I will not talk to you anymore. My voice shook. I gave you 20 years of my nights. I gave you my loneliness. I gave you my prayers. I gave you my voice. But from tonight, I take my voice back. The wind moved through the trees. The leaves rustled. And for a second, it felt like the graveyard breathed. My son placed the flowers on the grave anyway. Not for his father. For closure. Then we walked away. As we walked out of the graveyard, Aisha walked beside me. She kept wiping her tears. She looked small, lost. But she wasn't alone anymore. When we reached the car, she hesitated. She whispered, "I don't know how to be part of a family." I looked at her, and I said something I didn't even know I had inside me. "Neither do I." And she smiled. A tiny smile. Through tears. On the way home, I sat in the back seat. My son drove. Aisha sat in the front. And I watched them. My children. Both of them. 2 lives. 2 stories. 2 pains. And I realized this was the beginning of something new. Not a perfect life. Not a happy ending. But a real one. When we reached home, Aisha stood at the door. She looked nervous, like she was waiting for someone to stop her. I opened the door fully, and I said softly, "This is your home too." Aisha stepped inside, slowly, like she was stepping into a dream. Then she looked at the walls, at the furniture, at the photographs, at my husband's picture. She froze. Her breath caught, and she whispered, "He looks happy here." I stared at the photograph, and for the first time, I didn't feel love. I didn't feel longing. I felt clarity. I whispered, "He was happy, but he didn't deserve it." That night, when the house finally slept, when the walls stopped breathing, I sat on my bed. I looked at his photograph, and I did not speak. I didn't talk about my knees. I didn't talk about the weather. I didn't complain. I didn't cry for him. I didn't ask him why. I didn't beg him to answer. I simply turned off the lamp and lay down. The silence came, but it didn't feel like loneliness anymore. It felt like freedom, and for the first time in 20 years, I slept deeply, quietly, without a conversation with the dead. Because love is not supposed to live in darkness. Love is supposed to be honest. And even though he never gave me honesty, I gave it to myself. I stopped talking, and I finally started living. End of the night, she stopped talking. If this story touched your heart, please like this video. Leave a comment and tell me, have you ever loved someone who didn't deserve it? And if you know someone who feels lonely at night, share this story with them. And don't forget to subscribe.